Have you ever wondered if the story you know about Adam's children truly reflects the whole truth? What if I told you that there are names that vanished from the sacred accounts, traces that faded into the silence of centuries, and that perhaps the Bible itself left clues that few dare to interpret? Leave us your comment and tell us if you've ever felt there was something hidden in the Genesis narrative. Today, we will delve into a mystery that has challenged theologians, rabbis, and scholars for generations. Who were the children of Adam who disappeared from the scriptures? From childhood, we learn that Adam and Eve were the first human beings created by God, and that their most well-known children are Cain, Abel, and Seth. These names are clearly written in the opening chapters of Genesis, and through them, entire generations of believers have built their understanding of the fall of man, sin, lineage, and the redemptive promise. But what if those names were merely fragments of a broader and deeper story? What if other children of Adam and Eve existed, but for some reason were silenced or relegated to the margins of the sacred text? This is not just academic speculation. It is a spiritual question that touches the core of our own identity as children of the same God who created Adam. The book of Genesis 5:4 states, "And the days of Adam, after he had begotten Seth, were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters." A simple phrase, almost hidden among lengthy genealogies and lists of descendants, but one that carries immense theological and spiritual weight. Adam lived 800 years after Seth's birth. What happened during those 800 years? How many sons and daughters were born? Who were they? What stories did they carry? Where is the legacy of those who also came from the dust shaped by divine hands? The Bible's silence regarding their names is not a denial of their existence, but perhaps an invitation to discernment, to search, and to listen to what can only be heard in the Spirit. The Midrash, an ancient rabbinic commentary on the scriptures, sheds light on this obscure question. In some Jewish traditions, it is speculated that Adam and Eve had 70 sons and daughters, a symbolic number representing completeness and totality. Among them, there are names that appear in extra-biblical traditions, such as Awan, considered by some to be Cain's wife, and Luluwa, mentioned in certain Gnostic manuscripts. These names are not part of the traditional canon, but they are present in ancient traditions that echo what Genesis whispers. There was more, much more. The Gnostic tradition, for instance, suggests that some of these children were set apart, removed, or even hidden because of their roles in spiritual conflicts that marked the earliest days of humanity. The war in heaven, the fall of the Watchers, and the antediluvian corruption are recurring themes in texts like the Book of Enoch. And although this book is not part of the traditional biblical canon, it was widely read in early Christian communities. In it, we find a cosmology where the children of men and the children of angels intersect. And this intersection perhaps points to descendants who could not continue the covenant lineage due to spiritual contamination. It is in this context that the most unsettling questions arise. Could some of Adam's children have been excluded because they chose spiritually dangerous paths? Could the biblical silence be a form of divine protection so that we do not focus on lineages that were lost? Or could the omission itself be a sign that the true people of God are not measured by literal genealogies, but by a spiritual descent, as Paul writes in Galatians 3:29, "And if ye be Christ's, then are ye Abraham's seed, and heirs according to the promise." Another layer of this mystery lies in the use of the Hebrew terms ben, son, and yalad, to beget, throughout Genesis. These terms are not only biological, but also spiritual. When Genesis says that Adam begat sons and daughters, the verb yalad carries the idea of transmitting not only flesh, but also essence, identity, and purpose. So when we encounter the absence of names, we are not merely facing a literary oversight, but perhaps a spiritual interruption. Something happened among Adam's children that caused their names to go unrecorded. And what the scripture omits, the spirit may whisper. Augustine of Hippo, in his Confessions and Commentaries on Genesis, approached the mystery of silence with reverence. For him, what God does not reveal in words, he reveals in signs, in experiences, in spirituality. And perhaps the absence of names invites us to recognize that not all who came from the flesh are called to bear the name. And that there are indeed children who were lost, not only from the genealogy, but from communion. This reality confronts us. Because if there were children who disappeared, who were forgotten or strayed, what does that say about us? Are we heirs of the promise or descendants of a silence? Do we walk with the name upon us? Or are we among those who chose spiritual exile, like Cain, who went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, east of Eden? That land, whose name means wandering, may also be a symbol of the spiritual state of those who did not remain on the path. And here lies the deepest narrative tension, because in reflecting on the children of Adam who disappeared, we are not just looking back at an obscure past. We are looking within, to the places in us where we too hide parts of our identity, where we bury names we no longer wish to remember. And perhaps the true mystery is this: all of us at some level have been Adam's forgotten children. We have been lost, silenced, and have dwelt in wandering lands. But the good news of the gospel is that even when our name does not appear in the record, God calls us by name. He sees us in the silence, He finds us in exile, and He offers us a new name, a new lineage, a new story. This story is yours. And perhaps in hearing about these forgotten children, we are in fact hearing a call to return, to leave the land of Nod and return to the garden where God's voice still walks in the cool of the day, because the Father is still searching for His children, even those whose names have vanished from the narrative. But what if some of those children didn't simply disappear from history, but from God's presence? This is a question that not only challenges the biblical narrative, but touches the spiritual reality of us all. Genesis 4 shows us that after killing Abel, Cain was marked by God and banished to live as a wanderer. Yet he had children. He built a city. He gave names. But those names, over time, vanished from the sacred lineage. Why? Because the blessing of the promise was upon another son, Seth. And so we learn something deeply spiritual. Not every descendant of Adam carried the seed of the covenant. Some carried only the inheritance of the flesh, while others would bear the spirit that points to the Redeemer. The silence of the scriptures regarding Adam and Eve's other children may not be a mistake, but a living metaphor of a spiritual divide that still echoes in our day. On one side, those who aligned with divine purpose, represented by Seth and his lineage, culminating in Noah and later in Abraham. On the other, those who chose paths of forgetting, rebellion, or pride, whose names were absorbed by time like dust in the desert. This contrast is emphasized in Genesis 4:26, when it is said that, "Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord." In other words, even amidst the multiplication of children and descendants, true worship, deep communion, and spiritual awareness were found only in one branch. The rest were lost. In the Babylonian Talmud, there are traditions that mention that Adam, after Abel's death and Cain's curse, separated from Eve for many years in mourning and repentance. During that time, according to some rabbinic sources, other women and children arose through symbolic relationships, representing the fall of humanity and its attempt at reconstruction. This leads us to reflect. Could the disappearance of certain children of Adam be, in fact, a portrait of humanity's attempt to restore what was lost without God? Could the story of these hidden children also be the story of man trying to build his own path, without presence, without an altar, without sacrifice? Origen, a church father and profound interpreter of the scriptures, believed that certain biblical characters represented spiritual archetypes more than mere historical figures. For him, Adam was not only the first man, but a symbol of all humanity. And his children, therefore, would represent the paths we can take, that of obedience and that of perdition, that of the covenant and that of pride. In this light, the disappearance of some children would reflect the human condition. We are always faced with the choice of being remembered by God or forgotten by our own decisions. A curious detail worth highlighting is the fact that biblical genealogies are selective. They do not mention all the children or descendants, only those relevant to the plan of redemption. This is evident in the genealogies of Jesus in Matthew and Luke, which trace different lineages, but both converge on the Messianic covenant. This shows us that the Bible does not record facts for mere chronology, but for divine purpose. Thus, the children of Adam who disappeared are no less real. They are simply spiritually disconnected from the mission that runs through the Scriptures. And there is yet a deeper reflection. If we all come from Adam biologically, then we all carry within us the potential to be part of the forgotten lineage or the chosen lineage. And what defines this difference is not blood, but spirit. John 1:12-13 reminds us, "But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God." This is the key. The new birth, the new name, the new sonship. This is what rescues any lost child. This is what rewrites the story. Throughout the Scriptures, we see several examples of people whose names were erased, like those who followed Korah in rebellion, those who fell in the desert, or the descendants of Saul who did not endure. But we also see a God who loves to restore, who loves to give new names, who calls the forgotten and raises them up. He did this with Jacob, who became Israel, with Simon, who became Peter, with Saul, who became Paul. And perhaps this is what the mystery of Adam's disappeared children is trying to teach us. What matters is not where we come from, but whether we hear the voice calling in the garden. And it is at this point in the narrative that everything falls into place. Perhaps the disappearance of Adam's children is not just a historical absence, but a spiritual appeal. Perhaps they did not disappear from the earth, but from the presence. Perhaps what was lost was not the body, but the spirit. And perhaps what God is telling us by hiding these names is this: you too can disappear from the sacred story if you do not remain in me. The truth is that Genesis is not just an account of the beginning. It is a mirror of the soul. And as we look into it, we see that the recorded names are far fewer than those that were lost. But there is grace in this, because even those who vanished can be found. Even those who strayed can be called. The God of Adam still calls his children, and the name he gives us is eternal. Therefore, if you feel that parts of your life have been lost, if there are stories of yours that have not been told, if there are pains you think God has forgotten, remember this: the Lord knows every name, even those never written, and he can call you back. Just as he called Seth to restore the lineage, just as he called Noah to preserve the promise, just as he called Abraham to begin anew. There is still time, there is still space in the story, there is still a place in the book of life. And now that we have journeyed together through this mystery veiled in the Scriptures, I leave you with a question that does not seek a simple answer, but a profound awakening. Are you certain that your name is written where it truly matters? The children of Adam who disappeared may have been lost to history, but God still writes new chapters with those who answer his call. Perhaps you don't know where you got lost, but he knows exactly where you are. And if today you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. The silence of the forgotten names turns into a song on the lips of those who return. May your name not vanish from eternity. May you choose to be remembered, not by men, but by God. Leave your reflection in the comments. Have you ever felt like a forgotten child? We want to hear your story. And if this message touched your heart, Subscribe to the channel, share this video, and allow others to awaken to the truth hidden in the scriptures.